Most women experience dyspnea during pregnancy due to the normal physiologic pulmonary changes. Progesterone likely triggers a sensation of dyspnea and stimulates the respiratory drive in the medulla, resulting in increased minute ventilation, mostly via increased tidal volume and slight increase in respiratory rate. The hyperventilation increases PaO2 to facilitate oxygen delivery to the fetus and decreases PaCO2, respiratory alkalosis, to encourage unloading of the acidic waste from the fetus. Because of the gravid uterus, the resting position of the diaphragm elevates in pregnancy, then compressing the lower portion of the lungs. The resulting basilar atelectasis causes decreased residual volume and functional residual capacity, as well as slight decrease in total lung capacity. However, diaphragmatic excursion is not impaired and actually increases, which combined with increased chest wall expansion allows for larger tidal volume. Although breathing takes place at a low baseline lung volume, low means lower FRC, vital capacity is unchanged. So here I make a mnemonic for remembering pulmonary changes. All 3-letter word decreased and 2-letter word increased except vital capacity. Why 2-letter word is increased? Because it is essential for both fetus and the mother. The most specific change is decreased residual volume, and that leads to decreased FRC, ERV and TLC because all contains residual volume. Uh, because of progesterone induced increased respiratory drive, there is increased minute ventilation and tidal volume and inspiratory capacity. As inspiratory capacity is increased and ERV is decreased, vital capacity remain unchanged, uh, because that is vital for keeping fetus alive. If you are little bit confused, then my advice is you should revise all lung volumes and capacity. So how to manage pulmonary embolism? Here are two mnemonics for two different pathways. First is COW for AD and second is COPDI. CO means check for contraindication for anticoagulation, W for modified Wells criteria, and cutoff score is for A for anticoagulation, D for diagnostic test for pulmonary embolism, which is CT angiography, and COP means contraindication present, and I means IVC filter. So how to approach to patient with suspected pulmonary embolism? First step is always stabilize patient with oxygen and IV fluids. Then you should evaluate for absolute contraindication to anticoagulation. If there are absolute contraindication to anticoagulation, then you should apply mnemonic COPDI. COP means contraindication present. Then you should obtain diagnostic test. D means diagnostic test to evaluate for PE. If diagnostic test is positive, then you should consider IVC filter. I means IVC filter. If negative, then no further evaluation needed. If there are no absolute contraindication to anticoagulation, then you should apply mnemonic COW for AD. W means Wells criteria. You should assess clinical suspicion of PE with modified Wells criteria. If the cutoff score is greater than 4, then it indicates PE is likely, and then you should consider anticoagulation, especially if patient has no relative contraindications and moderate to severe respiratory distress. If modified Wells criteria score is less than 4 or equal to 4, then it indicates PE is unlikely. Then you should obtain diagnostic test to evaluate for PE. While in case of PE is likely, after anticoagulation, you should also obtain diagnostic test to evaluate for PE. If diagnostic test is positive, then you should start or continue anticoagulation, and consider surgery or thrombolytics if indicated. But in case of negative diagnostic test, you should stop anticoagulation. Some important points you should remember regarding modified Wells criteria. First, compression ultrasonography is the preferred initial test for diagnosis of deep venous thrombosis. Second is D-dimer testing can be helpful in patients presenting with unlikely probability of PE, means modified Wells score less than or equal to 4. However, a negative D-dimer test result cannot be used to reliably exclude PE in patients with a modified Wells score greater than 4. Also, I make a mnemonic for paramnemonic effusions. There are two types, complicated and uncomplicated. L for complicated. Complicated effusions develops in case of low immunity. It is large and most often loculated. It has low pH and low glucose and high LDH, and it requires a long course of antibiotics, approx 2 to 4 weeks. And as for uncomplicated effusions, it develops in case of strong immunity. It is sterile, small, and sliding, means free flowing, and pH and glucose of the fluid similar to serum. So let's revise paramnemonic effusions. Uncomplicated. Sterile exudate in pleural space, small to moderate and free flowing, pH greater than or equal to 7.2, glucose greater than or equal to 60 milligram per deciliter, WBC less than or equal to 50,000 per millimeter cube, and LDH less than 1000 or equal to 1000 units per liter. Always negative pleural fluid gram stain and culture, and treatment is antibiotics. In case of complicated, bacterial invasion of pleural space, moderate to large and free flowing or loculated appearance in chest x-ray, pH less than 7.2, glucose less than 60 milligram per deciliter, WBC greater than 50,000 per millimeter cube, and LDH greater than 1000 units per liter. Positive or negative gram stain and culture, and complicated effusions requires both antibiotics and drainage. Normal pleural fluid pH is approximately 7.60. Transudative fluid is usually due to systemic factors such as increased hydrostatic pressure or hypoalbuminemia, and has a pleural fluid pH of 7.40 to 7.55. Exudative fluid is usually due to inflammation with a pleural fluid pH of 7.30 to 7.45. Pleural fluid pH less than 7.30 with normal arterial pH and low pleural glucose is usually due to increased acid production by pleural fluid cells and bacteria, or decreased hydrogen ion efflux from the pleural space in case of pleuritis, tumor, and pleural fibrosis. Glucose less than 60 mg per deciliter is usually due to rheumatoid pleurisy, complicated paramnemonic effusion, or empyema, malignant effusion, tuberculous pleurisy, lupus nephritis, and esophageal rupture. Pleural glucose less than 30 mg per deciliter in particular suggest an empyema or rheumatic effusion. Glucose concentration in empyema is decreased due to high metabolic activity of leukocytes or bacteria in the fluid. Some important pathophysiological points for COPD. Increased radiolucency in chest x-ray. elongated and narrow heart shadow, barrel-shaped chest, and flat diaphragm. Progressive hyperinflation, and that leads to increased lung compliance. Decreased elasticity of alveoli, and that leads to decreased positive collapsing pressure of the lung, and so decreased negative expanding pressure of the chest wall. And so new pressure equilibrium at higher lung volume, and that leads to increased functional residual capacity, increased thoracic wall recoil, and that leads to more difficulty in decreasing intrathoracic pressure during inspiration, and that leads to increased work of breathing. And also there is a dynamic exertional air taking and decreased inspiratory and expiratory flow rates. And volume changes includes increased total lung capacity, functional residual capacity, and residual volume. The patient present with worsening joint pain after scuba diving. It is decompression sickness. During the descent phase, the increased ambient pressure causes a greater amount of the gases to be dissolved into the bloodstream and resulting in excess dissolved nitrogen accumulating within the bloodstream and tissues. Slow return to the lower ambient pressure at the surface allows time for the excess dissolved nitrogen to return to the lungs and be removed with exhalation. However, with rapid ascent, the abrupt decrease in ambient pressure may cause much of the dissolved nitrogen to come out of the solution and form gas bubbles throughout the tissues and bloodstream, leading to pain and obstruction of the blood flow. Symptoms of decompression sickness usually start within an hour of ascent but can develop up to 24 hours later. Type 1 decompression sickness is relatively mild and includes bands and cutaneous involvements. So what is the bands? It is musculoskeletal involvement, consists of painful joints that are non-tender to palpation and have normal range of motion. The elbows and shoulders are most commonly affected. Cutaneous involvement consists of pruritus and erythema. And also there is lymphatic involvement present, may cause lymphadenopathy and localized edema. Type 2 decompression sickness is severe and includes neurologic symptoms. The staggers, which consist of ataxia, dizziness, visual disturbances, and possibly spinal cord involvement. And the chokes, it is a pulmonary involvement. It is rare but can lead to obstructive shock due to venous gas embolism occluding the pulmonary vasculature. So, how to prevent decompression sickness? To prevent decompression sickness, slow ascent and delay of flying for 12 hours after diving are recommended. Initial treatment with IV fluids and 100% oxygen helps improve blood flow and increase oxygen delivery to the tissues. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber facilitates the resorption of gas bubbles and should be initiated as soon as possible. So here I make a poetry for remembering whole decompression sickness, and here it is. Rapid ascent making out rapid bubbles, elbows and shoulders painfully rumbles. Don't be the hustle, itchy red skin mumbles, otherwise brain staggers and lung struggles. And recall that winners are always turtles. Please provide your feedback in the comment section, and if you like the video then hit the like button and stay awesome. Thank you.